Our programs are getting better and fresher. And it's because we are thinking about you. NTA, it's all about you.
President, African Development Bank means President Buhari restates commitment to Nigeria's socio-economic development aspirations.
New funding regime to boost oil and gas sector receives endorsement of National Economic Council.
Senate confirms appointment of 5 INEC commissioners as the House meets President Buhari over security.
And today on Good Morning Nigeria, we focus on women in politics.
Well, in most elections across the globe, especially Nigeria, women remain a force in determining who emerges as president, governor, and indeed any elected position due to their numerical strength. However, their massive turnout during the elections has failed to translate into victory for women contesting such elections.
Well, why some women, such as Golda Meir of Israel, Margaret Thatcher of Britain, Indira Gandhi of India, Angela Merkel of Germany, Benazir Bhutto of Pakistan, might have succeeded, the same, of course, cannot be said of Mrs. Hillary Clinton, who last week lost the U.S. presidential election.
Well, even with the 1985 Beijing affirmative action of 35% representation of women in political and elective positions in Nigeria, the number of women in elective and appointed positions is not encouraging as a result of the parochial dominance of men in Nigeria.
Well, if we take a look at elective positions in Nigeria since the advent of the Fourth Republic in 1999, it is evident that women have not reached at least 10% representation. Now, since 1999, no woman has, of course, been vice president of the country, not to speak of being president. And then in 2011, a female presidential aspirant could not survive the party primaries.
And you could also recall that in 2015, a renowned woman professor who flew the banner of a political party was denied expected support from women who were overwhelming even in the turnout during the presidential elections.
And just last year, that's to say the 2015 general elections in Nigeria, 5 women out of the 13 persons who were nominated as vice presidential candidates. Well, the men, of course, had 14 of them contesting the position, but none of the women obviously became vice president. Now, take a look also at the other institutions of governance. The Senate, there are 109 members constitutionally prescribed. Now, in 1999, when the Senate came into being for the Fourth Republic, there were only 7 women that took their seats. The number dropped to 4 in 2003, rose again to 9 in 2007, but again declined to 7 in 2011, and then stayed the same figure at 7 in 2015.
And also, if you look at the House of Representatives, out of the 360 members of the House in 2009, only 7 are women, while in 2003, just 21. 27 in 2007, and we saw 25 in 2011, and in 2015, just about 14. No woman governor, and I repeat, no woman governor has been elected since 1999 till date.
Well, at the subnational level, that's the story, of course, is basically the same, but we've had, a governor, a female governor by default. We had that Veggie Etiaba in Anambra State when you had a contentious impeachment of the governor, who obviously was later reinstated. Now, but let's take a look at the situation with the state houses of assembly. There are some 990 seats in the various state houses of assembly, and since 1999 we've had 24 women in 1999, and then the number climbed to 40 in 2003, moved up again to 57 in 2007, and then climbed up to 68 in 2011. However, at the local government level, as we all know, local governments have obviously been mismanaged, and therefore you have caretaker committees being in charge, and so these are just appointed officers. Women have not fared any better in terms of either being appointed to caretaker committees or winning elections either as councillors or becoming chairpersons of their respective local governments.
Well, the truth is that the critical question we should be asking this morning, or we're asking, is why has it been impossible for women to get their right political space to contribute to nation building? Who is responsible for the inability to attain ultimate political positions, the women or men? We have experts in our studios dominated by women who will provide answers on today's edition of Good Morning Nigeria. I'm Rhoda Albo, and welcome to the program. Kingsley, some people would say it's a very serious issue, looking at what just happened in the United States.
Certainly, I mean, there's no doubt about that a number of women elsewhere around the world hopes that Hillary Clinton will be victorious. She got the majority votes, but the electoral college system has ensured that it is Donald Trump, who will, of course, become president, assuming the electors on the 19th of December do decide to stick with the tradition that we have seen over the centuries in the United States of America. So it's a pretty serious subject matter. But as we have also indicated, we have had women elected to positions in other parts of the world, become presidents or become prime ministers. Indira Gandhi, unfortunately, was assassinated in 1984. We also had, in the 70s, Sirimavo Bandaranaike of Sri Lanka. He was then known as Ceylon. My name is Kingsley Osadolo. I join my colleague Rhoda Albo in welcoming you to this edition of the program, coming to you as always live on Africa's largest TV network. That's the Nigerian Television Authority. In the course of the program, we have our usual companion segments, and these include business, sports, arts, and entertainment, and also foreign news. In the meantime, we're going over to the newsroom, and our guide this morning is Lydia Bassi. Hi, Lydia.
Good morning, and welcome to the news. The African Development Bank has restated its commitment towards supporting Nigeria's socio-economic development aspirations, saying the country is too big to fail. President of the bank, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, who made this known at an audience with President Muhammadu Buhari, said $600 million has already been approved for Nigeria as a first tranche of its supportive gesture. The shrinking Lake Chad and other devastating consequences of climate change on the people dominated discussions.
Africa is estimated to have to, need about anything between $14 and $17 billion a year between now and 2050 to adapt to that climate change. And so I exchanged some ideas and thoughts with Mr. President about how it's very important to have an insurance mechanism in Africa that will insure African countries against this catastrophic risks. As you know, the bank has supported Nigeria, quite strongly. As I've said many times, Nigeria is too big to fail. We'll continue to provide that support. So Mr. President's leadership on that is crucial.
Meanwhile, Nigeria will implement its nationally determined contribution with a sovereign green bond that will be launched the first quarter of 2017. This fund projects targeted at reducing emissions towards a greener economy. This was contained in President Buhari's message to a side event during the Africa Day at the United Nations Climate Talks in Marrakesh, Morocco.
We are developing sectoral plans for the 5 main economic sectors in Nigeria, namely power, oil and gas, agriculture, transport, and industries. We are ensuring full ownership of and commitment to the NDC by the relevant ministries, departments, and agencies. This multi-sectoral collaboration is crucial to delivering results on the pledges and essential to mobilizing international support for our effort.
Back home, the National Economic Council, NEC, endorses a new funding regime for the oil and gas industry. The regime eliminates the cash call regime, which has dragged the industry in about a decade, stalling growth. The decision was taken at the Council's meeting in Abuja.
What we've been able to put together has enabled us to shave about 1.7 billion savings for the federal government on the 6.8 that was previously owed. So we're going to be owing only 5.1 as opposed to 6.8.
Report on the excess crude and proceeds presented by the Honorable Minister of Finance. As at November 2016, the balance of excess crude proceeds stands at $2.4 billion US. Also, that the sum of 1.1 billion was disbursed in the month of October to 35 states, and a total of 6.3 billion has now been disbursed to each of the 35 states of the Federation.
Central Bank of Nigeria governor convinced council that on the need to provide financing, much needed financing to micro, small and medium industries. When that is done, the micro, small and medium industries have the capacity of improving the macroeconomic stability of the nation.
And to the legislature, Senate has confirmed the appointment of 6 commissioners for the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, and 5 members of governing board of the Nigerian Communications Commission, NCC. This and other proceedings came up at Thursday's plenary.
On behalf of the Senate, congratulate the 2 new Supreme Court justices who also are coming to join the Supreme Court at a very crucial time.
In the meantime, the leadership of the House of Representatives is to meet with President Muhammadu Buhari over the state of insecurity in Nigeria. The House also resolves to convene a national dialogue on security lapses in the country.
Is to urge Kaduna State, a management agency, and NEMA to provide relief materials to the victims in the affected villages.
Soldiers that are posted in this area, whenever there's an attack, you discover that they will be away, as rightly said.
It brings to fore the issue of review of arms carrying. If every citizen has right to carry arms, I'm sure that if you want to attack a community, you have a second thought.
On the 10th of October, here, it was agreed that there should be a battalion or a brigade established of the army in Kafancha.
I think it is gradually coming to a time when a state of emergency may be needed in southern Kaduna.
Information and Culture Minister Lai Mohammed says plans are underway to take the Change Begins With Me campaign to the states. The minister stated this while addressing the Governors Forum, where he presented the Change Begins With Me campaign messages. Lai Mohammed said the campaign, which is not tied to any political party or religion, is designed to help change perception from negative to positive. The minister says as states governors, they have the capacity to assist in ensuring that the campaign sinks for the desired impact to be achieved. He, however, solicits for free airtime on the various state radio and television stations for the jingles to be aired. To effectively tackle contemporary security challenges confronting Nigeria, the private sector needs to urgently complement government's effort in supporting indigenous automobile firms. Chief of Army Staff Lieutenant General Tuku Buratai said this while taking delivery of 3 customized military vans produced by an indigenous firm.
This is the type of support that we need for our troops to operate more efficiently. And with this initiative, it will definitely reduce our dependence on foreign items and bring about more employment and indeed ability for us to look more inward.
All the reinforcement on the vehicle to move in this type of terrain. Yeah, this type of terrain is very dangerous, and this is what they need. That's why I design it and get it for them to test.
How to stem all unwholesome labor practices to keep a nation out of economic recession dominated discussions at the 4th Registrar of Trade Unions Annual Conference held in Abuja. The aim is to re-examine the role of social partners in combating the challenges of economic recession.
We are optimistic that these actions, spearheaded by the government, will improve economic activity and steer the economy out of this recession.
We have lost the value of 18,000. When we signed the 18,000 minimum wage, it's equivalent to $110. Today, it's less than $40. So any consideration to try to provide solution must be centered on how to have quality leadership at all strata of government.
Meanwhile, relief is on the way for motorists plying the deplorable Enugu-Onitsha Expressway. Anambra State Governor Willie Obiano stated this while inspecting ongoing palliative work on the road.
What I'm trying to do is to do palliative on this 9-kilometer stretch of road, hoping that thereafter the federal government will be able to properly award and finish this road. This is a very important road for people commuting through Anambra State to Enugu and other states.
And that's the news for now. Good morning, Nigeria. We'll continue with Kingsley and Rhoda after the break. Good morning.
If you hear a bomb explosion or gunshots of an active shooter, that might be a terror attack. At such times, always remember 3 action words. Run, hide, report. Don't try to run towards the terror scene to save the situation, because there might be a second bomb blast or another attack. Run far away and take cover. Make sure you are safe first. Yes, it is in our nature to sympathize over the hurt, but remember, only trained personnel can help in such situations. When in a secured environment, promptly call relevant authorities and help will come. For anonymous reporting, call 09630-3250-5 or 0813-2222-106. If you see something, say something. Nigeria unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Hello, dear. You've got the first signs of a sore throat.
Yes, and I'm afraid it could be signs of a sore throat.
Don't you worry. Just act immediately, but not with non-medicated throat sweets. Take an expert product. Take Strepsils. Look at what it does to sore throat germs compared to a throat sweet. Strepsils not only stops the germs from multiplying, it even kills them.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, sore throat. Stop a sore throat early. Take Strepsils.
NTA Properties Investment Company Limited, a subsidiary of the Nigerian Television Authority, specializes in creating comfort in all areas of life, such as real estate investments, that is, land, houses, and office spaces, mast leasing, savings and loan scheming, household items and car loans, and so much more. Other information and entertainment services include Property in Style, a TV program that airs on the network service of the NTA, and also Property Connect, a nationwide magazine. Our priority is to bridge poverty gaps and sustain quality welfare of our clients. Partner with us and watch us help you grow. Pay us a visit today at the NTA headquarters permanent site, Area 11 Garki, Abuja, or our Lagos office at number 15 Awolowo Road, Ikoyi, Lagos. For more information, visit our website on www.ntaproperties.com.ng, or you can email us on ntap2000@yahoo.com. Call us on 080-2316-3474 or 080-6939-5185 or 070-3189-0555. NTA Properties Investment Company Limited, the much needed help at your doorstep.
All right, it's Good Morning Nigeria, and we are reaching you on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Now it's time for us to take a look at business stories. And of course, the federal government is said to have recovered some 4.2 billion naira from revenue collecting banks. And it's also a story on a telecommunications expert who has identified technology startups as a key to national development. We now join Uzo, our correspondent, for details of the stories.
The issue of inability of revenue collecting banks and agencies to remit appropriate collections made has continued to draw attention. The latest revelation appears to have given credence to the fear of leakages. The Revenue Mobilization Allocation and Fiscal Commission said it had recovered 4.2 billion naira in remittances from collecting banks into the Federation account. Mr. Shetima Ghana, the Commission's acting chairman, said this while inducting the lead consultants and other auditors on the verification and reconciliation of revenue collections and remittances by the collecting banks. The collecting banks collect excise duties and taxes on behalf of the Federal Inland Revenue Service and the Nigerian Customs Service. He said that the money was recovered during the exercise that was carried out on banks' collections of these taxes and duties between January 2008 and June 2012. Ghana said that there was about 20 billion naira that was still outstanding but had not been recovered from the banks, adding that the success recorded in the first phase of the exercise made the National Economic Council, NEC, approve a second phase which is ongoing. The Nigerian Communications Commission, NCC, the telecoms industry regulatory body, has stressed the need for Nigeria to identify and develop technology startups who have great ideas that could effect developmental change in the country. The Executive Vice Chairman of NCC, Professor Umar Garu Badambata, who stated government's commitment to develop technology startups in the country, said the idea to develop technology startups would boost accelerated national development in the country. Meanwhile, the former Secretary General, International Telecoms Union, ITU, the United Nations agency that coordinates global telecommunications activities, Dr. Amadon Tori, has said that with the massive population of Nigeria, the country can attract heavy foreign investments in the area of telecoms, agriculture, and other sectors if the country's policies are well tilted towards infrastructural development. Tori Wu was a special guest of honor at the Nigeria's Investment Forum in Bangkok, Thailand, the host country to this year's ITU Telecommunication World, said Nigeria has a population of over 170 million people, majority of which fall between the age bracket of 25 years and 45 years, and that this group of people are entrepreneurial in nature and technology savvy. The UN representative said the large population of Nigeria is a major factor that would attract investors because the market is huge and the people are ready. He, however, said government must enact and implement policies that would boost infrastructural development in the country to enable foreign investors get attracted to the country. The federal government has unfolded new take-off date and capital base for Development Bank of Nigeria, DBN. Minister of Finance, Mrs. Kemi Adeosun, who stated this during an event in Lagos State, said that the proposed bank would begin full operation by January 2017 with $1.3 billion, about 400 billion naira capital base. Investigations revealed that the journey to set up the bank started in 2013 when the federal government set up a working group under the National Council on Privatization, NCP. The working group came up with a recommendation, in addition to several other recommendations, that Nigeria needs a strong development finance institution that will further open up access to finance for Nigeria's micro, small and medium enterprises. With Business News, I am Joy Uzo.
All right, thank you very much, Joy Uzo, for the Business News update. It's time now for us to take a look at some of our dailies and, of course, what's our stories on the front page of major dailies across the country.
Bayo Toby, the Good Morning Nigeria newspaper reviewer, is here with us for today's edition. Bayo, come in and welcome.
Good morning, Kingsley. Good morning, Rhoda. And good morning, Nigeria.
All right, Rhoda.
All right, today we'll begin with The Nation. And on The Nation, let's begin with the lead story on The Nation. On The Nation, it says 2.2 billion naira fraud, ex-ICC man to try Supreme Court shifts. 2.2 billion naira fraud, ex-ICC man to try Supreme Court shifts. And on The Guardian leads this way: government can't pay salaries of former presidents. Government can't pay salaries of former presidents, with rivals Shagari, Obasanjo, Jonathan Babangida owed 10 months' salary. SGF blames lack of fund. How 2 ex-leaders raised their pay by 100%. All right, Casey.
Well, that story you just talked about, Rhoda, it's also the lead on the front page of New Telegraph. New Telegraph says, federal government owes IBB, OBJ, Jonathan, and Shagari 10 months' salaries. And it's, as a rider, Gawan, Shoneko, Abubakar affected too. And SGF cites paucity of funds. Details of the story can be found on page 2. But there's a quote there from Senator Ali Wabako, who says, for someone like Shagari, who lives from hand to mouth, it is something I can't understand. This development is really unfortunate. So that's there. Now, it's also a headline on the front page of the Punch newspaper, this time above the nameplate. It says, federal government owes Shagari, Jonathan, Obasanjo, others 10-month allowances. That's on page 7 in greater detail. Now, other headlines there: Justice Unguta to be arraigned November 21st. And reps ask Buhari and Dogara to stop southern Kaduna killings. That's on page 11 in greater detail. Now, that's an earpiece there beside the nameplate. It says, federal government moves against agencies over financial abuse. And this story for the Punch: PDP differs as Buhari says corrupt Nigerians fighting government. That's on page 7. And below that, below the headline there is an excerpt that says the president, quote, the president isn't saying the truth about the so-called war against corruption, and he knows. Now, at the foot of the front page of the Punch newspaper, we have the following headlines. The photograph, by the way, talks about, as a caption, demolition of Shiite registered Fudiya school by the Kaduna state government. This was in Zaria, and it took place yesterday. Now, 3 other headlines there at the foot of the front page. APC spreading poverty in Kogi, says PDP. And panic in Rivers as police disperse APC and PDP protesters. Federal government ASU meet over strike on Monday. That's on page 10 in greater detail. Bio.
Yes. The indication about elder statement not being paid their perquisite was made when the Senate Committee on Federal Character and Intergovernmental Affairs visited the office of the Secretary to the government. And the reasons given are not far-fetched. There is paucity of funds. Meanwhile, following the sitting of the Federal National Economic Council, the federal government has revealed that it has disbursed 220.5 billion as budget support facility to 35 states. Each of the 35 states got 6.3 billion for the services. However, to benefit from those facilities, they had to comply with fiscal sustainability plan agreed at the National Economic Council. The Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment also says that there are 37,067,416 micro, small scale and medium enterprises in the country. And the Governor of Central Bank says there is fund excess of 200 billion available for this category of enterprise. Related to that is the concern expressed by the Minister for Finance that some federal government agencies do have a tendency in keeping the revenue they generate rather than paying them into the federation account. Such agencies, some of them do not remit to the account, others collect revenue in foreign currencies and remit in naira. Some also pay themselves bogus salaries different from scheduled emoluments. In other climes, if you work in the public service, everybody gets a basic salary. The only differences relate to the allowances peculiar to your calling. For instance, if you are a doctor and you are on call, you get your call duty allowances. If you are, for instance, in the military services, and you get allowances peculiar for your service, and those are the differences. The situation is such that our computer-age school leavers these days, they all have a very good idea about the salaries, and they are very selective about which commissions, which corporations, and which agencies they want to work for. Because sometimes you find the same graduating student from the same department working for two different agencies, and the differences in the salaries they earn as first-time workers could be as much as 50 or 60%. And that creates a lot of concern among them.
All right, Bayo, let's quickly take a look at some of the stories trending on the front page of The Guardian. And just beside the picture story there, the picture story is that of President Muhammadu Buhari and the United States Secretary of State John Kerry during the COP22 in Marrakech, Morocco, just yesterday. And beside that picture story, on page 4, fresh fears over aviation fuel scarcity hits operators. Fresh fears over aviation fuel scarcity hits operators. Senate approves creation of Poverty Commission. The Philippines may follow Russia out of the ICC. And 340 drowned within 3 days in the Mediterranean Sea. Below the picture story, no deal on $13 billion loan. Senate tells Buhari. He says his meetings with Buhari not about borrowing. Let's quickly move now to The Nation. On The Nation, above the masthead, I am the first to live up to 70 years in my family, says Atiku. That story is on page 6. And revenue agencies spend 90% of its 1.5 trillion naira yearly. Senate clears Durojaye, Dare, and others for NCC jobs. That's on page 8. And on page 6, you can read up Jonathan Obasanjo IBB owed 10 months salary. I think those are the top stories trending on The Nation this morning. All right, Kingsley.
All right, let's return to the New Telegraph. New Telegraph above the name flag. Two headlines there. Anxiety mounts as sack of bank workers persists. And below that, $600 million to manufacturers. That's the kicker. CBN unveils list of beneficiaries. The story is in greater detail, pages 16 to 24. Now, below the name flag, there are other headlines. Buhari looters deploying stolen funds to fight government. And army arrests 37 Boko Haram suspects in Lagos and Ogun. That's on page 10. And on page 6 in greater detail is the headline, recession. Demand for family planning increases. And nobody in my family ever reached 70 years. That's according to former Vice President Atiku Abubakar. Details of that story on page 2. Now, at the foot of the front page of New Telegraph is a headline. Again, militants abduct farmers in Lagos. And that's on page 8. And blood pressure could be controlled naturally. That's in detail on page 10. Bayo.
Yes, there was panic in Port Harcourt yesterday as protesters of the All Progressive Congress and the People's Democratic Party all took to the streets heading for the State House of Assembly. The police say they had no alternative but to disperse the crowd. In the meantime, those of the APC say that they were protesting the non-swearing in of their legislators that have been elected, while the PDP members says they were demonstrating in support of the lawmakers. The Speaker of the Rivers State House of Assembly came out to receive some of the people, and he was saying that they want to establish their presence and a difference. I think there is need for politicians, particularly the test citizen in the state, to realize that there is a difference between campaigning and governance. At that level, they should be careful about how they heat up the polity. The police say that they had to use minimum force to disperse them, but the protesters claim that they were tear-gassed and some of them were shot at. In fact, a camera crewman from Channels Television is also reported to have been wounded. Also talking about security, members of the House of Representatives have said they are going to convene a national conference to discuss on security. They have also mandated the Speaker to visit Mr. President and draw his attention to the killings in southern Kaduna State. The latest was the killing of 43 people from Chawai Chiefdom in Kauru local government of Kaduna State.
All right, Baya Toyebi, let's return to the Daily Trust newspaper. Daily Trust newspaper, the front page of Daily Trust. We'll just take a couple of stories before we move to the inside. Now, the states that we've already talked about, the looters fighting back with stolen money. Now, 35 states get 220.5 billion naira loan as budget support. That headline is also there. But the list story says, federal government probes Jonathan over ecological fund and rules out sharing of excess crude account. And then at the foot of the front page, Plateau JNI secretary kidnapped in Kaduna. That's on page 4. And reps to beat Buhari over insecurity, page 12. And federal government has no power to scrap NNPC and DPR. That's according to the union, and details of that story can be found on page 13. Now, I just want us to go to page 29 of Daily Trust. There's a photograph there. It was, of course, a snap shot taken from a video that went viral. A black South African being forced into a coffin by a white farmer. Apartheid, of course, collapsed finally in 1994, but this is the latest evidence that in some parts he's still alive and well. They threatened to set him ablaze because they accused him of trespassing on their farm.
There's alarm raised by the Minister of State for Petroleum, Ibe Kachuku, and he said that Nigeria needs to get our refineries working now, otherwise they will become scrap. He cited, for instance, that if by 2019 the Dangote refinery comes upstream, then it will be too late for Nigeria to save the 4 refineries he has. And his rationale is not far-fetched. He says that the production cost at the refinery now is about $27 per barrel, while the ideal one ought to be not more than $18 per barrel.
All right, that's the much we can take by this morning, and I want to thank you very much for coming to discuss with us. Of course, throw more lights on the stories on the pages of some of the dailies that we have read this morning. Thank you very much, Mike.
Thank you for having me.
All right, focus this morning is on women and politics. Promises to be quite interesting. We'll be back in just a moment.
Nigerians. Suicide bombers are not spirits. They are not ghosts. They are human beings like you and me. They live amongst us. They are your neighbors. They are your friends today, but terrorists tomorrow. So you must know your neighbor now. Security begins with you and me. Know your neighbor. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me.
If you see something, say something. Nigeria unite against terrorism.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Today, Ariel will show you how to save more in these tough times.
Wife's powder. It's pretty good and money's tight. But Ariel gives better cleaning with less powder.
Impossible.
Come with me.
Spaghetti sauce, chocolate drink.
For these tough stains, I'll need 1, 2, and just 1 handful of Ariel. New Ariel gives better stain removal with less powder.
That's real savings. Ariel removes tough stains better in 1 wash.
Hear the call of change. Stand up, Nigeria. Change is here and it's going to stay. Change begins with you. Oh yeah, make we go. Voting so let the change begin from within. Look at your eye, okay, ruler. Change begins with you and me. Change begins with me. Change begins with me. Change begins with me.
All right, welcome back. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria, Africa's largest TV network, the NTA. This morning, our focus is women and politics. And to set the tone for our conversation this morning, Timothy Yusuf has put together this background report that captures women and politics.
Women remain key in the development of the younger generations and management of families, but this has not been translated into reality in politics at the national level. This is in spite of the fact that the development of any country requires the participation of men and women. Hence, the global recognition that gender equality in political participation is a fundamental aspect of modern democratic governance. Expectedly, analysts believe that men and women should have equal rights and opportunities to participate fully in all aspects and at all levels of political processes. But in practice over the years, women face challenges as the number of women in leadership and decision-making positions is abysmally low. A school of thought says it has been proven that countries with increased women's participation in politics and leadership positions tend to be more inclusive, egalitarian, and democratic. Scholars further submit that gender relations have made it difficult for one half of the population of women to make significant contribution to development, hence the need to understand gender and gender relations. Even in the so-called advanced democracies, women are still marginalized. For instance, in the United Kingdom and the United States, women representation in parliament was 9.1 and 9.0% respectively as at 1994. The UNDP's 1995 Human Development Report estimated that women's unpaid work is equivalent to some $11 trillion annually. Although women constitute over 50% of the population of the world, they are relegated to the background in every facet of life. It is important to note that there is difference between sex and gender. Investigation reveals that the number of women in parliament all over the world is not commensurate with the population of women. Studies also show that higher number of women in parliament generally contribute to stronger attention to women issues. But unfortunately, there is increasing participation of women in parliament. Despite this development, as of 2009, only 17 heads of state are women, with 25% of parliamentarians globally. The recent U.S. presidential election between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump even called to question women's support for one another. Data emanating from the election shows that had women cast overwhelming ballot in favor of Hillary Clinton in the swing states, she could have been standing as the 45th president of the United States. Who really is holding back women from attaining higher elective positions? Analysts say many factors that hinder women participation in politics include patriarchy, violence, money, cultural barriers, and religious barrier. The situation in Nigeria, they add, is similar to other countries of the world. While the then President Olusegun Obasanjo appointed women into key positions and a woman was elected Speaker of House of Representatives, during President Goodluck Jonathan's administration, women occupied 33% of cabinet positions and produced the majority leader in the House of Representatives. In the present dispensation, women occupy 19% of appointed positions. Official records released by INEC shows that a total of 809 women emerged as candidates for the 2011 elections on the platforms of various political parties. This represents a 17% increase over 692 women who emerged as candidates during the 2007 elections. But when the results were released, women's representation at national level went down slightly from 7.5% in 2011 to 7.1% in 2011. In the 2015 elections, the number further decreased to 7 in Senate, representing 6.4%, and 19 in House of Representatives, representing 5.2%.
I would like to thank our correspondent Timothy Yusuf for that elaborate background. Now we have a number of guests with us here in the Abuja studios as well as at our Just Network Center. At this time, we'd like to welcome Honorable Nena Ukeje. She's chairperson of the House Committee on Foreign Affairs, and she represents Bende Federal Constituency. Honorable Ukeje, a pleasure once again to have you on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you once again for having me on Good Morning Nigeria.
Okay, and then we also have with us here an administrator and public affairs commentator, Hajia Amina Bayero. Hajia Bayero, a pleasure to have you on the program.
Yes, thanks for having me here.
Okay. And also here with us in the Abuja studios, we would like to welcome a politician and former managing director of the Lower Benue River Basin Development Authority, Dr. Mrs. Ada Chenge. Chenge. Dr. Chenge, a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much.
Okay. And join us from our Just Network Center, of course, another familiar face on Good Morning Nigeria, Professor Sam Ego. Professor Sam Ego, Professor of Political Science, it's our pleasure to have you again today after such a long while.
Yeah, good morning, Kingsley.
All right, Rhoda, let's roll.
All right, let's begin with Honorable Nina Okeje. It's a known fact that as women we are a force to reckon with when it comes to elections because of our numerical strengths. And it's been known that most elections, the number of women that turn out determines who wins an election. You have contested elections, you have won, you have also been re-elected in a country where we see this, a low number of women being actually represented. What do you make of women and politics, especially in Nigeria?
Well, women in politics in Nigeria, the history and the journey for women in politics is one that is, is one that is fraught with so much problems, with so many problems. The problems, of course, are tetra-headed. The solutions, the myriad of solutions are out there. But I'd say to you that it is a very, very difficult journey for women in politics. Of course, the issues, the reasons why women in politics have the concerns they have, or why we do not reflect the numbers, half of the population, it comes down to the patriarchal nature of Nigeria, like you said, religion, of course. Nigerian politics is is hugely monetized. We also have institutional issues. The political parties are the old boys club, where we have certain problems. Of course, they have tried in so many ways to come to the point where from the beginning, from 1922, amendments to the Constitution, they've tried political reforms, electoral reforms to try and find out ways in which women can have better participation. But the truth of the matter is that while whatever we say on paper is there, out there on the field is a landmine. People actually do not want to see women in politics. We have to work twice as hard to be thought of as half as good. And so the issues are, of course, education, funding, preconceived notions, violence in politics, like I said again, the structure of the political systems. And once you have all those things to contend with, it's very difficult for you to come out with the numbers that we would like to see with women. There's absolutely no doubt, and we hear the rhetoric all over over and over again, that for women in politics, for a country to develop properly, you need proper representation of women. They say to us that the Scandinavian countries develop better because they have more women in politics and so on. And we hear the rhetoric, but we're able to replicate it in Nigeria because of, and of course a lot of African countries, because of these issues.
All right, Honorable Nina Okeje, thank you very much. Just before we get the reactions from the other two ladies with us in the studios, I would like to go over to Jos and get Professor Sam Ego's historical take on this. Professor Sam Ego, you listen to Honorable Okeje and indeed our background report, and perhaps what is also out there in the public domain about complaints of the exclusion of women. But historically, is it necessarily the case that women enjoyed ab initio the right to vote in the first instance, not to speak of the right to be voted for? When did major democracies get the universal adult suffrage? So what are we battling with? What are we battling against? These entrenched historical experiences?
Yeah, I think, let me thank the NTA for pulling together the background documentary to this discussion. I think it was quite rich and really pointed to all the issues that are involved. You have painted the correct scenario, Kingsley, by going down to history to show how over time women were marginalized and the progress we have made, precisely because there has been consistency in the struggle to expand the political space for women, which is not surprising because even democracy itself, which we are enjoying today, was a product of struggle.
And therefore, the principle is that we will continue to struggle to expand the political space for women. Now, there are 4 reasons, ordinarily, why we shouldn't even be discussing, this problem. The first one is the reality of demographics, the fact that women constitute more than half of the population. The second reason is that there is evidence that where women participate in governance and decision making, their performance is very, very high. Not, of course, for all women, but the evidence points to the dominance of, good, positive performance for women that are involved. The third reason is that in our own country, we have, we have policies that actually say that women should, be involved in decision making. So the national gender policy is there, and we have commitment to that. And the fourth one is the international obligations that Nigeria has committed to, namely to advance, the participation of women. But the reality is often different. And what that reality points to is that while there are all the good reasons for women to be progressively involved in decision making and in elective offices in particular, women issues in politics are actually mediated by many factors: ethnicity, religion, culture, and so on and so forth. So you are not really dealing with objective reality. You are also dealing with how class, ethnicity, religion all mediate, and therefore make a difference in terms of what we want and the real level of involvement of women in decision making.
All right, Professor Samegu, thank you very much. We'll come back to you in the course of this. Now, let's return to our Abuja studios. One of the points that was made in the background report, and Rhoda, we also bantered on this while we were introducing to this program, had to do with the election that took place in the U.S. and the loss of Hillary Clinton. Is there a sense, and my question is going to Dr. Adab Chenge, is there a sense in which the outcome of the U.S. presidential election might have had some impact on the consideration of women and politics if Hillary had won that presidential election? My question is to you, Dr. Adab.
Oh, thank you very much. Actually, there is no doubt that if Hillary Clinton had won the election, that it would have actually impacted a lot on women globally in terms of success in the participation in election and the change of rules and laws. But then actually you can see the system varies, nation varies. So I didn't just believe that if Hillary had won in America, that Nigeria would immediately change. But I feel that the women in Nigeria particularly had done so much. When I took the statistics in 1960, when Nigeria got independent, I discovered just about 45 million people. And then from 45 million today, we're 180 something by the National Population Commission. And so for country participation, you can see that women have actually brought about the power force, the Nigeria you talk today, the giant of Africa you talk today. But then I feel that Hillary would have won, it would have actually helped us. But then I also want to put it on record that Nigerians, especially Nigerian men, had to make a deliberate policy, the political parties, the legislation, and then the executive have to make a deliberate policy to enable these women who have so shedded blood to produce this quantity of army we call the Great Nigeria, to be participated and to be part of this very process of rulership. Most of, just like you have said, in terms of where women have won, have ruled, we are mothers, and so definitely there is nowhere that women rule that there will be no face of change. We believe very well that our president, though this present government is 19%, we women are looking seriously, especially those of us from the APC, were so optimistic that the government will step up women participation in this particular government. By and large, I feel that women in Nigeria particularly have done so much that Nigerian men, sometimes I laugh at it. When we are with you as your daughters, we are your pets. But then a woman moves to the next man's house as a wife, and then the other man there who had regarded his daughter as a pet, who ensured the daughter, like some of us that did engineering, we went to school with the men, and we came out with beautiful results. Those are doctors. They are female doctors, female pilots. They're doing well. I think Nigeria as a body should do a deliberate this thing. For Hillary to have gone even that far, it shows that America gave a lot of space. But I know that if she had won, it would have actually changed our history actually globally.
All right, Dr. Ada Chenge, thank you very much for your perspective. Now let's come to a public affairs commentator, also an administrator, Hajia Amina Bayero. Let's take off, I would like you to take off from where Dr. Chenge just stopped. In your opinion, what has been lost in terms of impetus as a result of Hillary Clinton's loss, particularly in the Nigerian context? Not forgetting also that Hillary herself and the whole world also knew that she broke a glass ceiling by becoming the first female candidate, as we say here, or as they say in the U.S., presidential nominee of a major political party in the history of the U.S.
Like you said, she almost, for us, she almost. We were all praying that she would break that glass ceiling, but unfortunately it didn't happen. Like what we're discussing now, your background information, you told us about cultural reason, religious reason, and the environment. But, I believe that our leadership recruitment process is the main problem we're having, even with the men. But you see, with the women, it's worse off because, at the time you have these politicians doing their thing, they leave out women. Women are usually shut out, and they have their meetings in the night. They have their meetings, nocturnal meetings, As a married woman or as a woman, it's not easy for you to go out at night, to have these meetings with people and all that. So I think basically the environment does not encourage the woman politician. I think that is basically our problem. We are not encouraged at all. Apart from culture and religion, the funding, women don't have money. And usually the politics we play, especially in Nigeria, is the politics of money, and most Nigerian women don't have the kind of money that the men have. So that is basically the problem we're having in Nigeria.
All right, thank you very much, Amina Bayero. But then I'd like to get back to Honorable Nina KJ. Of course, all of our guests, we've all agreed that funding, of course, you said education, religion, violence, it's all part of this. But, even personally, I think the platform isn't really there for women, especially with the main political parties. But then, one issue that a lot of people, especially men, have come out to say is that we are our own undoing, that women have not been able to support other women. And we saw that play out in the American elections also, that there was a low turnout of white women voters for Hillary Clinton. Even in Nigeria, Professor Shania contested on the political party. Yes, that was an election. We had massive turnout of women vote, but she had very few number of women vote for her. Well, what's your take on this?
Well, I'll start from the American elections where you said low turnout of white women voters. Now, the arguments have been proffered that the reason why Hillary Clinton did not win the elections was not necessarily because she was a woman, but because there's a global paradigm shift. And so the white voters could relate or could not relate to the message. They probably had gone with the flow of what has happened in the rest of the world, the new global trend, where rather than it be where people are anti-establishment, where people are going against the trend, and we've seen that in all the recent elections. So it's not about women or men. It's about a paradigm shift in the rest of the world. Now, a lot of people say that women are women's problems, but I believe it's still the old boys club trying to throw it right back at us. The issue is institutional. And the electoral reforms, which was headed by the very revered retired Justice Mohammed Ways, came up with so many institutional reforms. Yes, indeed, like Hajia has commented on, the fact that we're unable to access the meetings in the night, the fact that, of course, there's cultural, there's religious, but at the end of the day also, the structure of our political parties. Justice Ways, in his reforms, actually came up with a fact where he said, in line with the gender policy, that there had to be at least 30% female participation. He spoke to INEC. He said that the INEC chair would be a man, and the woman and the vice would be a woman. He spoke to the fact that the makeup of INEC would be the commissioners, there would be 4 men and there would be 2 women drawn from the 6 geopolitical zones. He spoke about the structure of the parties, where we would have 20% of women at the leadership of the parties. And these things spoke to very granular issues about the reasons why it's difficult for women to come out of our political party structures as they are presently structured. Now, of course, women are unable to, when they say that women are women's problems, it is because at the end of the day, they probably say that women are the ones who would come out to vote and that they would rather vote for the male candidates. But the truth of the matter is that, like she said, it's a hydra-headed problem. We cannot, a lot of Nigerian women cannot afford politics. Politics is about publicity. Publicity costs money. Logistics cost money, and so on and so forth. And you see, you can only vote for a candidate you know about. People make informed choices. I do not believe that when people say that women, I mean, of course, they said all sorts of things towards the pull her down syndrome, but it's no different with the male candidates. It's just that it's twice as difficult for us as women to make it because of the electoral processes, the structures in our political parties, and the systems that throw up the candidates. If we had a system, and of course, the Constitution as well, the laws as well. For instance, we have up until today been unable to domesticate the CEDAW bill. The Nigerian gender policy is one that gives women 35% affirmative action. We have not been able to do that. We have not been able as a parliament to get back by Section 42 of the Constitution that speaks to discrimination. Every time we speak about affirmative action, they come back at us that it is against the Constitution. So there's so many landmines that women must get over to get to where it is we want, the female participation, the numbers in the female participation, be it by policy, be it by legislations, be it by traditional practices. So when people just oversimplify the issues and say that women are women's problems, I don't think so. I believe that what happened with Hillary Clinton was a myriad of issues. The FBI, the old boys club. I mean, when we speak about America, this is a 200-year-old plus democracy. And this is the first time in 200 years that they're getting a woman. Yes, we were hoping she would shatter the glass ceiling. She left it intact. But, you know, the good thing about the female struggle is that in her concession speech as well, she said to us, you know, keep at the good fight. So let's not oversimplify it. It's a tetra-headed problem, but there's a myriad of solutions. And so when we oversimplify the issues, it is another way of making it seem as if it's not a serious problem. It is a serious problem. It's traditional, it's institutional, it is financial, it is everything under the sun and the kitchen sink. So, you know, it's not about women, quite frankly.
All right, Honorable KJ, thank you very much. Let's go back to Professor Sam Ego at our Just Network studios. Professor Sam Ego, there are some persons who believe that a request to ensure better representation for women in both elective and appointive offices, there appears to be a sense in which we are seeking to build an edifice from the rooftop rather than from the foundation. The quest for political power, for instance, speaks to elaborate organization. Is there a sense, therefore, in which getting women into elective offices, we have tended to focus on the bigger offices rather than those micro offices from which you could then have a groundswell of support and ultimate influence going forward?
Well, I mean, I've listened to arguments, and they're very impressive arguments, that why do you have to concentrate on running for offices at the level of the state level and at national level? Why don't you start, from the grassroots level, local government, councillor, and so on? Which is a good argument, but I think the structures that we have identified, which work against women participation, will still be there. My point really is that we need to look around and study what has happened in many African countries, where, for example, women have been able to overcome the historical disability that we are discussing in the Nigerian context. Here I'm referring to countries that, by African standard, are so insignificant. Talking of a country like Tanzania. I'm talking about Uganda. I'm talking about a country like Malawi, and so on, where you have had dramatic improvement in the presence of women in the decision-making arena. And what is the point of departure for these countries? It is the law. It is the constitution. It is the political will to advance the interest of women by creating quota for women, by creating gender quota, by creating affirmative action, so that when you have it legislated and constitutionalized, it is no more about goodwill, which people may choose to take or not. It becomes binding on society. And I think this is exactly what we need to do. For Nigeria in particular, there are many issues that we have neglected. In fact, as Justice Ukeji referred to the Justice Ways Committee, there was a major recommendation by that committee that we need to reform our electoral system to move away from the current first past the post system or the majoritarian principle we inherited from the British, and incorporate some element of proportional representation, which in fact, in principle and in practice, is capable of opening the space for women. And I think so we can think about affirmative action, we must talk about the political will, and we must talk about tinkering with our electoral system to create that space for women, if we are really genuinely concerned about that. And that is why arguments that say, well, women don't vote for themselves, I think it's a very lazy argument, because that argument does not recognize the very structures that make women vote against themselves. So you go back to patriarchy, you go back to religion, you go back to culture, and so many other factors that in fact make it possible for women to vote against women. So instead of blaming the victim, let us go back to those structures that produce the kind of political behavior, or voting behavior in women where they vote against women. And we must return to the constitution, we must return to the law, we must return to reforming the system entirely. And political parties are gatekeepers. Worldwide, political parties are run by oligarchies. And the tendency is for men to dominate in that oligarchic system. So you really need to reform the party system and open the space for decision making. Otherwise, if women stay at the periphery and do not take part in making decisions within parties, there is no way they can make progress. And that is why in 2007, in 2011, there were more women aspirants than those who eventually got the ticket. And when the results came out for those who got the ticket, again, the result was the same. So let's go back to these big issues.
All right, thank you very much, Professor Sam Egwu. Lots of issues you have raised here. But then I'd like Amina Bayero to also speak to the issue that Kingsley just raised now, that a lot of people have argued that, women ought to start from the grassroots so that they can lay a proper foundation if they're aspiring for, high offices. But some people are saying, what is wrong in a woman aspiring for a higher office even just at the beginning?
Thank you very much. Let me start by, thank God Linda Ikeji is here, and they make the laws. It will be nice.
I'm sorry, yeah. Honorable Nena Ukeji.
Sorry. Sorry, I said
you just referenced a blogger. So.
Yes, exactly. And the one in just said justice. I'm sorry about that. Sorry about that. No, KG, thank God you're here. What we expect from you people in the parliament already is for you people to make the laws that will give the women will give us the backing we're looking for. You people are there, make these laws like Sam Egu said in Jos, that the constitution needs to be, you need to put these things in the constitution for it to help us, you understand? Because if we are going to, go on the same this thing with the men, we will never get there. They make it so difficult for women. They make it so impossible for women. Like I said earlier on, apart from culture, apart from funding, and apart from religion, I said, and I keep insisting on the leadership recruitment process. Our problem begins from there. If we are able to tackle the leadership recruitment process, then we will be fine, So, what was your question?
I said, some people say women want to stand by aspiring for high offices rather than...
Okay. Like from where I come from now, if you ask me, if I go to my state from the grassroots level, they'll say, what's this woman doing there? That's about the culture we're talking about. So sometimes it's easier for us when we come to the cities, we join the men, at the top. From the beginning, if I go to my state now, nobody is going to vote for me. How many local government chairmen do you have as women? How many? It's so difficult. It's so difficult. Education is also vital because they are not so educated. They think, what's this woman doing there? And they don't get this. We don't get the support we need, even from our women folk. That is the truth. That is the gospel truth. So we need these things entrenched in the Constitution. That is the only way.
All right. Amina Bayero, thank you very much. But then, Honorable KG, of course, before we get to Adachenga, I'd like you to, of course, react to what she has said in terms of, Constitution. And you are one woman that has actually distinguished yourself. Some people still ask, the positions that women have been given in the past, what have they been able to do with it? Why should we give them more?
I am so glad that Hajja says to me, put it in the Constitution. I really do wish it was so easy to put it in the Constitution and get it over and done with. Section 42 has always been a landmine for us. That's the section that speaks to no form of discrimination. So every time we have had problems domesticating the CEDAW bill. Now, they say to us, of course, the CEDAW bill speaks to affirmative action. We have tried that. We have done it. It's been thrown out in the Senate. Even very recently, it was thrown out in the Senate. We had to take it back, rejig it, take out the contentious issues that run against tradition, that run against, even in the House of Representatives. Having seen that we're about to bring back the amended CEDAW bill, or the affirmative action bill, a colleague of mine actually came up with a bill to ensure that anything that runs against the culture of Nigeria is not put in the Constitution. Now, that is his way of putting another cog in the wheel of the progress of this affirmative action bill. We have certain people who have argued very vociferously against Section 42, that Section 42 would work against anything that seeks to give affirmative action. Of course, for us as women in Parliament, we say to them that the Constitution is self-evident, but it's not self-enacting. And that is the reason why we have subsidiary legislations. For instance, the Child Rights Act, the People Living with Disabilities Act. And now, when it comes to the Gender Affirmative Action Bill, everybody still decides that it's not a bill. With regards to the quota systems, we have a problem with INEC. We have to have the census figures, the proper delineation, and then we can now have the constituencies that we would give the quotas to women. It is not so easy. There's the gender policy, the Nigerian gender policy, it states in the gender policy that women will have 35% affirmative action. So it is not for want of laws or policies or the direction to go. It is because of the application of the said laws. But let me say to you that the process of amending the Constitution is such that we tried it in the last round of the constitutional amendment. Most of the states threw it out. So we have continued to try. It's not for want, it's not the lack of the political will. But then again, it takes numbers. It's a chicken and egg approach. There's only 15 women in the House of Representatives. It takes numbers to pass this kind of bills. Now, without the numbers, we'll not be able to pass these bills. And if we can't pass these bills, we're not going to get the numbers.
And what's the implication of this? When you have women more than 50%, you know, in a country like this, and you have a low representation, what are the implications we might have?
Well, it just means that our democracy is not representative enough. It just means that when the voices of women are so few in parliament, that female issues will not be brought to the fore. I mean, there's only, 14 of us, and there's 360 men. And for there to be a constitutional amendment, there has to be a 2/3 approval, first of all, of men agreeing that this is even worthy of amendment. So, I mean, the implication, your guess is as good as mine. I mean, MDG 3, the last MDG 3 was gender equality. Now, SDG 5 is gender equality. And what they all say, and we all agree, that if we do not have adequate female participation in any government, that the development indices will be a lot lower. Now, that is what it is. Our democracy is not representative enough. Our parliaments are definitely not representative enough of the demographic as far as women is concerned.
I said, can we go back now to the political parties? Can we shift our the emphasis now, instead of the Constitution? Let's go back to the political parties,
which was
to see what the political parties can do for the women.
Yes, but which was part of the electoral reforms that I spoke to. You know, that the political parties must have at least 20 women in the leadership of the political parties. But what happens? We're given assistant auditor, one ex-official, one woman leader, because of course no man would want to take the woman leader position, and so we don't have 20%. So we must go back.
And it's
there.
so heartbreaking, because you see, in this election that, this 2015 election, women played a very active role. I know that women campaiged and everything. But right now, let me just...
No, hold on a second, Haji.
Okay.
We'll come back to you because Dr. Ada Chenge has also been itching to contribute to this. Dr. Chenge, what's your take? Is legislation going to be sufficient? Bear in mind the point raised by Professor Sam Egu, that the reality is often different from what what is referred to as your international obligations. Honorable Keji has talked about CEDAW and other pieces of protocols and treaties that we have not been able to domesticate. Is law sufficient to achieve this?
You know, when I started at first, I told you about population of Nigeria. I told you about Nigeria being unique, even if Hillary had it in US, that it's not going to affect us here. The legislators are from the society, and the society has to believe. Off record, if I show up the camera now, I think in this studio we have about 5 men here and 4 women. If off record and I ask you individually, without this beautiful talk we're talking now, and said, do you really want a woman to be a governor of your state? I'm telling you, you're going to tell me right here that no, she cannot be, So it has to do first.
Dr. Chenge, why are you making that presumption? You should ask us the question first.
No, I did that recently when we were having a conference.
But not in the studios here.
Not in the studio yet. I've not done that, but I think when you talk of statistics, when you've done it 2-3 places, you can infer that it is same in other places. What I'm trying to say is that the people, legislators, just like the Honorable said, just 15 women there, they can't make it. Most political parties, 2-3 women there. The society, the people, the Nigerians have to realize that this is a part of resources that they are wasting. You have 100% of utilization, and you decide to use 50%, and you want to have a growth, and you feel that you're really moving Nigeria to a destiny, I don't think the society, which is the men, women are not against women. Let me tell you, in political, I've run 2 elections. I contested to be governor in 2007. I knew how it was. I knew how rough it went. 2015, I ran to be governor of my state still. It was rough and hectic. But these decisions were not made by women. Some few men said, look, vote for this. And women being obedient. Women are only paying for the obedience. Being obedient to their husbands, being obedient to their political leaders, decide to go where the men say go. And so most times when they go that way, men turn around and say, oh, even your second refused to vote for you. But then he had instructed that this woman should vote for this XYZ man. And once it's done, the obedience nature of a woman, the nature of submissiveness, makes the other followers to like, oh, Senator, this have said, former governor, this have said, former president have said, this one have said. Since they have said, please, I don't want trouble. Let us leave this, our sister out. We love her so much, but we can't give her the vote. So by and large, the society, Nigerians, especially the men, I brought up the point, it looks like as if it's not one of the popular points in terms of, I am your daughter yesterday, you took me as your pet, and you made sure I went to school in the best school, you made sure I read the best course, and all of a sudden I'm married to another man, and then you sit down and you talk about women, and you don't remember that this woman that is in this man's house, vying to be House of Assembly member, vying to be a senator, it could be that your daughter that you did not, so by implication. So somebody spoke about starting from the grassroots. Women have always started from the grassroots. We've always started from the grassroots. It's just that when it comes to a point that you've reached a certain stature, and then you have to go for this higher position, you go for it. But just like you gave example, local government councillor, even if you want to be a councillor, you meet the chief, and then he's telling you, let me consult with the other elders and the chiefs in the village, you decide. And so at the end of the day, the chiefs sit down and say, no, it's our daughter, it's our wife, why should she come for this position? So even if we start, if we want to, most times people look for flimsy excuses to give to women why they didn't vote for women. If you talk of starting from grassroots, did Hillary not start from grassroots? She did, but she didn't make it. So I don't think that's the point. I think by and large, men, our fathers, our husbands, should make a deliberate effort in Nigeria. Having noticed this population rise, 45 million to 180 million people, all by the blood of women. If the former military generals and soldiers who died for the sake of Nigeria is always remembered and honored, why not women?
Yeah, I agree.
All right, Dr. Ada Chenge, thank you very much for your views. We'll come back to your raised at some point that we're going to pursue, but that also follows from what the other guests, especially Professor Sambe Gu had touched on earlier. And just to indicate as well that we have reactions already from our viewers who've taken advantage of the Twitter handle at NTA GMS. So we'll take those tweets now and then return to the conversation.
All right, let's begin to take some of the tweets we already have. This one is from Sanusi Muhammad Sani. Said women should be given the opportunity to participate in politics because some women are more active than men.
And then Sani Makoji has this. Statistics show that women participation in Nigerian politics is below 5%. It is so because of our conservative idea.
And he also continues to tweet, we must encourage our women and male politicians should do away from politics of bitterness and thuggery and hooliganism.
And we have this from Snoop Hawk Jr. Says Nigeria is suffering from propaganda-driven politics, and that's the male policy. Now, it's high time we gave women a chance in politics.
This one is from Professor Remishanaya, and just to indicate that she was supposed to join us on this discussion this morning, but then we had a challenge. But then she tweets, thanks for the ongoing conversation. The main issues are being raised. Women now have to unite and work to remove the landmines.
And She to 10 has this, says gradually women will get there. It took America more than 200 years to have a woman presidential candidate for a major party, which we have that already in Africa. That's according to She to 10. Now, to return to the substance of our discussion, in our background report, Professor Sam Egu, as well as the other guests, have touched on some of the factors that inhibit effective participation of women in elective politics. We talked about the patriarchal nature of our society. We talked about culture. We talked about religion. And a moment ago, Dr. Adachenje was seeking to explain how all of this works. And that's my question. And it goes first to Honorable Ukeje before we go to Bayero and then to Professor Sam Egu. Ordinarily, you would refer to this as undue influence. How does a woman's mind work to, as it were, make her perennially in the political arena subject to these very influences that we're talking about, whether it's patriarchal nature, whether it's religion, whether it's culture? Is it that a woman, therefore, is incapable, I ask this question with the greatest respect, of independent thinking and independent decision-making when it's time for politics?
Well, and I'm glad that you prefix what you said with the utmost respect, because there are women who have run elections, there are women who have won elections, but it still goes back to what it is that I said. Women, there are gatekeepers in politics, and the kind of politics that we play, and I listen to the tweets and everything, the politics of propaganda, the gatekeepers, the civil society organizations, the press, the representation of the women, the ways that even female candidates are presented, makes it very difficult. And because we still are a very conservative people, there is this belief that women in politics are basically women who do not have boundaries or borders, and this is a very nice way of putting it. And because, of course, your opponents will throw at you whatever it is they're going to throw at you. And for a lot of women in politics, the ability to develop the thick skin that is required to plod on in spite of all these things and treat them as water off a duck's back is very difficult. Now, if there is a woman and your male opponent says, oh, well, you know, she's never at home, her children are on the streets, she's always running around with men, it jaundices their views. Now, they're gatekeepers, and you know, as they say, advertisement is a deliberate attempt to change the way a person looks at a particular product. Now, if they say it over and over and over again, people will believe that. Now, of course, people expect that the people who run political office, in political office, are people like Caesar's wife without blemish. And so they're held to a higher standard than regular people are held to. And so once there is a stain or a taint or some question as to the pristine nature of that person's character, it will taint it. Women have to work, we have to swim the tides. We're swimming against the tides because the press doesn't help the issues. I mean, blog sites, go to blog sites. Every female politician, any female politician you key her name in, the amount of dirt that would be on that female politician would be enough to sink your computer. And I believe that it is all that. Social media, oh, it hasn't been very kind to female politicians because, you know, and mainstream media as well. So we're swimming against so many things. And it is these things that form the opinion of the people who would necessarily vote for a candidate. And so what I'm saying basically is that it is not that they are unable to have independent minds. It is that they react to the information there, and that is what they react to. So their minds are made up based on the information out there. So it's, you know, it's...
All right, Honorable KJ, thanks. Let's get the views of Amina Bayero. Dr. Chenge was saying something that perhaps we are all fairly familiar with, say in remote locations. The woman says, look, I don't want to offend my husband. The daughter says, I don't want to offend my father, XYZ, so let me go along. She says women are very obedient, but it's your vote, it's your choice. Once you reach the age of majority, which is 18 years for purposes of access to the ballot, you should be able to make up your mind. So why do we have this persistent, as it were, undue influence on women, and the demographics ordinarily could have been helpful?
Let me use myself as an example. My friends know that I love politics. I love discussing politics. And they keep asking me, why have you not joined a political party or something? But I have my husband. He's there. He would not let you. It's not as if you don't have the mind.
I hope he's not watching this.
You have the mind, but you know they give you the option. Do you want to join politics, or you want to keep your home? These things are barriers that, you know, whether we like it or not, they are there. You know, my friends know me very well. You know, I love politics. I discuss politics and all that. And they keep wondering, But you see, I have my issues in my home. If I tell my husband, for instance, now, that I'm going out at night for a for one meeting or the other, he will tell me, no, you can't. If you go, stay there. You know, just remain there. Don't come back here. So, you know, you have choices. It's either you want to keep your home or you want to join this politics. But you see, what I think, or like I said, this 2015 election that just went by, a lot of women participated. But we haven't been adequately compensated. How many women do we have in this cabinet? How many women do we have as heads of boards, heads of parastatals? How many women? She's just telling me that there are no boards. I know there are boards, but all the boards, not all the boards have been, you know. So you see, that's the problem. You know, we also need our president today to do something about this thing. It's a huge problem, and we need him to help us. You know, the last administration had almost 31 or 35% representation. This administration, how many? Maybe 9 or 5%, I don't even know. How many ministers do we have? The last administration had about 17 ministers. This time we have only about 6 female ministers. So what are we talking about? If you cannot do it in the Constitution, and we help to put you in power, I think you should look at us and you should do something for us politically. I think that's our problem. You know, it's going to be very difficult, like she said, constitutionally. If we don't tinker with our constitution, nothing can happen. We need to tinker first with the constitution before we can get anything done constitutionally. But now, the whole world is changing. Our president needs to change. He needs to have, you know, he needs to put women. And you know, we hear that. We hear that where women have held sway, women are fantastic managers. Women are fantastic. You know, they excel. Wherever you put them, they excel. Corruption is so, we are talking about corruption. I think the men are even much more corrupt than the women. Women are more, you know, women are more careful about things and all that. So please, I'm talking to this administration. They need to do something for the women. They need to do something.
Even at that, you know, just recently, I think a survey was done, and we found out that even women don't want to have women as bosses.
It's not true. I worked somewhere before. I was the boss where I was working, and I had a lot of support from women. I had a lot of support from women. There are those who call me auntie, those who call me, you know, all these are the issues. These are things men want to put into our head. You know, men keep talking about that. We are our own enemies. Women don't like me. I don't think so. Yes, of course, you have exceptional cases. There are places where you have difficult bosses as men. You have women as well. I mean, so I don't think so. This administration, I'm saying it once again, this administration, it's a wake-up call. They need to do something for women. Like Aisha Buhari said, we all voted. Women came out in mass and voted. Next time, you know, it's not encouraging.
All right. Hajia Amina Bayero, well, thank you very much. You touched on a number of points. I'm sure some of the men who are watching may also have their reactions to what you've said. But let's return to Professor Sam Egu at our Just Network studios. Professor Sam Egu, these barriers that have been identified, including the ones you spoke to, and the perspective that the other guests have responded to in our studios, are they insurmountable, or if we need to begin to break down those barriers, what should we begin to do other than legislation that you also say can be difficult to enforce? Our problem is not the absence of laws, as you very well know. Sam Egu.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kingsley. Yeah, thank you very much. I've been listening to Ajia Amina Bayero. I mean, I have to concede that we are dealing with a long haul. It's not a short journey, and you are not going to find, quick fixes, in terms of a solution. But I want to return us to the problem of political parties. Now, and I'm going to make mention two issues that are troubling. The first one, if you recall, Justice Uwais focused a lot, the committee focused a lot on internal party governance and how this has implication for the possibility of women emerging as candidates. And one of those things that committee did was to say, look, let us, transform the structure of leadership in political parties in such a way that women become very visible, what people call the twining principle. But this was abandoned. But what is even more troubling to me is a recent discussion we had with political parties. And I listened to leaders of political parties that we consider very small. The point they were making is this. In this country today, there is no public funding for political parties. I took my own money, the money I would have invested in my family, to form a political party. And then you come and tell me that there are democratic principles about including women. I'm not going to allow that, because this party is my personal initiative, and I'm not going to allow this party, to be subject to democratic norms and practices. I said to them, well, you knew you were forming a political party, and therefore you knew the implication of your investment. Why not open up? And they said, no, this is our personal possession. Now, what am I saying? And this leads me to the larger picture of the party system and the funding regime. It is not an accident that 60% of democracies around the world have public funding of political parties. I'm not saying we should just throw money around for political parties, but we need targeted funding for political parties and to strengthen the smaller parties and to push them to open the space. I think women will have a lot of opportunities, with those parties, so I don't concentrate on the big parties. That's the number one set of points I wanted to make. The second point is about political will, and I want to return to this issue. Political will is not what people like Honorable Okeje will do in Parliament. It's more than that. The women in Parliament can have a united position. That is not the type of political will I'm talking about. It's a political will at the highest level of the executive. And I think Amina Bayero alluded to that. If the president wants a particular legislation passed, he knows what to do. So if we are really made up that we want to advance the part of women's participation, we can put our executive power behind that kind of proposal, and it will sail. So that is what will make a difference, as it did in many other countries. And the last point is that many women politicians do not have women constituencies. They are happy enough to be endorsed by men who are their godfathers, and they do not have developed women constituencies and the capacity to develop that constituency in order to mobilize them for electoral purpose. And this is something we need to do going down the line. So it's not enough to have this sentiment about women. Women need to know that their biggest resource is women, and therefore have to invest consciously in developing a women constituency so that you can overcome the apathy that women have in voting for women. And I think these are things we need to do in the long run.
All right, thank you very much, Professor Sam Egu. Of course, you've said that it seems like it's a long way to go, but then one step at a time, of course, would take us there. But then we'll take a break now. When we come back, we'll begin to, of course, round off and get final thoughts from our guest this morning. It's still Good Morning Nigeria. We'll be back in a moment.
What's your name, my dear?
Her name is Jabel. Shouldn't tell me. I love taking my selfies.
I have 2 selfies too. I'll give you one. And what use it for?
Are you serious?
So why don't you hop into my car and go to my hotel room and now?
I wasn't thinking straight.
It was thinking six. Selfie stick. This week's episode of Professor John Bull, starring Kanayo Okanayo, Mercy Johnson, Queen Wokoye, Yomi Fashlanso, and special guest appearance by Yvonne Nelson.
If you say me in a bushman, you na poorest man. Me, but you na desert man. You are a jungle man.
Professor John Bull, this Tuesday and Friday, 8:30 to 9 p.m. on NTA Network, International, and Star Times.
I don't think I'm looking fine here.
No, you're fine. Don't worry.
See my eyes here.
No, you're not that fine. No, eh?
Over and out. Welcome to the new speed of life.
People think it's the ever-changing weather during Hamatan that makes them sick. Actually, it's the germs. Dettol protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs, including flu.
Does your antiseptic liquid kill the germs that cause flu, diarrhea, typhoid? Dettol does. Dettol provides 10 times more protection versus leading competition. So why take a risk with your loved ones?
All right, welcome back. You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria. Of course, we've been talking women and politics, and we have all our guests still seated here in the studio. But then we'd love to take comments coming from our viewers who have taken advantage of our Twitter handle at NTAGMN. The very first one is from Change to Progress, and he says, emphasis on laws and laws won't change our story that much. We have several laws unobeyed because of cultures, religion, or religious beliefs in our countries.
And then we have another tweet from Professor Remi Shonaya again. As my colleague Rhoda said, she was supposed to have been with us in this conversation via Skype, but she's participating now, sending her tweets. She tweets, the landmines are within the political parties as well as in our institutions. Professor Ego is right. The structures must be changed. And
this one is from Ortega. Ortega says there is a need for the government to bring in more women as part of the Executive Council.
And then Snoop Hawk Jr. again has this. It says Snoop Hawk Jr. says it's a trademark. I hope it's registered with the Patents Office. Now there's a tweet. The issue here is jealousy. There is a great form of jealousy among women. That's why women can't go far in politics.
All right, just to indicate also that Professor Shonaya was the presidential candidate of a core party in the just concluded 2015 elections.
So, well, I think the issue of intragender rivalry has been dealt with. I don't want to, let's not dwell on whether there's jealousy or otherwise. But a more serious point, one point that Professor Samego was also touched on. We have had in this country women activists who were also great mobilizers. I mean, the late Hajia Gambo Sawaba, of course. We also had Lila Dogoyaro and several other activists. What is the challenge in getting women to act as effective mobilizers of women for the causes that we've touched on in the course of this conversation this morning? Let's begin with Honorable Okeji.
Well, I'd spoken to that issue initially. There are gatekeepers in all the political parties. Now, for you to get to the place where the women start to mobilize for you, you would have to be the candidate. Now, the problem is with the political party structures, for you to become the candidate.
Sorry, I know you said that, but are you saying that this is cast in granite and therefore it is unchangeable? If political parties realize that they cannot mobilize women to help them get the votes, and they know that women constitute a significant bloc, might that not be a change agent?
Well, it might be a change agent, but I still go back to the point where they have said it. In the PDP, for instance, they have said that they would make the forms for the women free. They come up with certain policies. But the truth of the matter is that at the end of the day, the political party structures will not throw up female candidates. Now, for you to become a female candidate, it's a delegate election. So the population of the women out there, the mobilization of the women would normally happen in the general elections, but it is the delegate elections are not, for instance, in the PDP, there's a policy that of the 3 delegates, there has to be 1 who's a woman. Now, the numbers are still skewed. So the processes to throwing up a political party's candidates would have to be tinkered with. It is still the structure of the political parties, right down to the structure of the political parties. For the women to become the candidates, for us to start to mobilize the grassroots support for women. Now, in most cases, I have run elections 3 times. And of my 3 elections, the largest number of voters in my case were women. And so while I agree that generally probably what Professor Samegu says is true, but the truth of the matter is that of the population of people that vote, even for the women, for the female candidates, would be higher if it were women. But it is the political structures for the women to get through those political party structures to actually become the candidates, and then they will now contend with the grassroots support of the women. Unless we do something about the old boys club, about the fact that the political party structures are patriarchal in nature, they are steeped in the old boys club, they believe that it is a male thing, they are not ready to open up the spaces until we tinker with internal democracy as far as that is concerned. And it goes right back to the Justice Uwe's recommendation, where he said that at least 20% of the leadership of the political parties must be women, where he says that women must participate in the political parties, women must participate in INEC, women must participate in the electoral reforms. Unless and until we have those, then the people who come out through the political party processes will always be men.
All right, Honorable Okije, thank you very much. Dr. Adachenge, why is it difficult for us to have a new generation of effective women mobilizers for women candidates?
I would say that maybe you have not identified women mobilizer of these days, but then I can tell you honestly that women are actually mobilizing women a lot. And when mobilizing women, it's a major issue that will support a woman that becomes a candidate. But just back to what Honorable said, we talk about delegate election, and we talk about 3 delegates per council ward. The entire council ward of a local government, you need only 3 votes from there. And by implication, the decisions are made right from the party structure. And so when the decisions are made by the party structure, and the party structure, 90% of the executive part of the party structure is held by men, and then we talk of women mobilization. I think that's secondary, because women are actually well mobilized. A lot of seminars, if you go to seminars, each time you have a call and you hear a call that women are calling women for politics, you see a massive turnout.
What is the outcome of the mobilization you're talking about? Are we seeing that in the rise in the numbers of elected female candidates in Nigeria? That's the point.
No, if you want to talk of elected candidates, we'll talk back on this very primary. You know, when we go to primary election, you talk about delegate election. When you talk about mass mobilization, then you talk about general election. When you talk about delegate election and you talk about women mobilization, it has to fall back to the community and the societal belief. Because if you mobilize women to support women, and the political hierarchy, which is 90% executive, comes together and say, no, I believe a woman cannot be a candidate of this party, then the entire mobilization just dies down, just drains away, and without you actually reaping the result. That is the reason why you can point at some of these women that have done it in the past, but you can't really point at them having elected from 1960 when we got independent. It's almost about 50-something years.
Thank you very much, Dr. Adachenge. But then very quickly, we're pressed for time. Amina Bayero, you've just listened to Honorable Okije and herself. They've raised a very important point here, that if you don't get the nomination, that is, if you don't get the number of people you need at a delegates meeting, especially women, then every other thing, mobilizing women on a larger scale, it's more or less water down the drain. The most important thing is having women, at the delegates conference. So what do you make of this?
It comes down to what I have always said, that the leadership recruitment process is our problem. You know, the problems are, like she said, institutional, structural. Even if, I mean, if you don't get elected or if you don't get nominated, how do you go campaigning for whatever? You need to, first of all, get nominated by your party. And you have issues with getting nominated by your party because you're a woman. Because most of the people who will, the delegates are men, and they will go, you know, they will not pick you. So you start talking about mobilization after you have been
won the party.
Yes, once we won the party ticket.
Are you sure? Are you sure? Is that the way it works? So you mobilize after you become a candidate?
Absolutely. How do you mobilize if you're not a candidate? What are you mobilizing for when you're not a candidate?
Oh, I see. So you don't sell yourself, you don't sell your ideas before you become a candidate?
You sell your ideas when you're coming from a party, and the party is not even looking at you, has not nominated you. So what ideas are you selling? To who are you selling the ideas?
Okay, Amina Bayero, thank you very much. Let's return to Jos. Professor Samuel, I mean, there's an issue on the table, but you have to be very brief on this. Aside from the issue of plutocracy that you talked about, do we get a proper sense of effective mobilization here? What needs to be done first? Is it the cat before the horse or the horse before the cat, based on the comments that we just heard?
No, what I'm really talking about is not a transactional kind of mobilization that women politicians do only when they get nomination, and then when they lose, they tune off. I'm talking about, creating and nurturing a a permanent, constituency of women that women politicians mobilize before nomination, after nomination, and even after they have lost nomination, to keep the matter on the public agenda. I think that's the point I'm making.
All right, thank you very much, Professor Sam Egu. Thank you for your thoughts and time. Thank you for joining us from our Just Network Center. Indeed, it's a pleasure talking with you. All right, I also want to thank, Dr. Adat Shenge, who is, of course, a Lower Benue River Basin Authority Development Managing Director and a former, of course, she's also a politician. Thank you very much for coming on the program.
Thank you so much for having me here.
And I also want to thank a public affairs commentator, Amina Bayero. Thank you for coming on Good Morning Nigeria.
Yes, I know most women are heartbroken. We are all heartbroken that Hillary Clinton did not make it. We pray that somebody else will do it for us.
All right.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. And of course, representing Bende Federal Constituency of Abia State, also the Chairperson, House Committee on Foreign Affairs, Honorable Nina Keji. Thank you for your thoughts and time.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, let's quickly bring you up to date in the world of sports now. Let's join our sports correspondent for that.